They say silence speaks volumes. Well, the silence I received from my brother Ethan, it roared. It was an early Thursday afternoon when the message came. I was sipping lukewarm coffee in my tiny riverside apartment, halfway through scheduling a shift rotation when the text lit up my screen. Hey, Clara guest lists finalized. Had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you. Understand. There it was, casual, surgical, and gutting. No explanation, no apology. Just like that, I was edited out of his wedding like a typo. I'm Clara, 34, the older sister, the fixer, the after-hours problem solver for a family that never bothered to ask how I was doing. My youth was a series of cleanups. Ethan's bad breakups, failed side hustles, spontaneous breakdowns. I was the designated damage control. I never said no. I thought that was love. And now I wasn't even worthy of a folding chair at his wedding. At first, I thought there had to be a mistake. Surely he meant someone else. But when I called Dad, the truth came slipping through his voice like oil on tile. Sweetheart, don't overthink it. It's just a wedding. Things are tight. Ethan and Rachel had to scale back. Scale back? In a San Diego banquet hall that seats 150, with a live jazz quartet and monogrammed cocktail napkins. I wasn't angry. Not then. Just hollow. I was never supposed to be the center of attention. I'd accepted that long ago. But this was erasure. This was a quiet little exile dressed in politeness. I didn't respond to Ethan. I didn't argue with Dad. Instead, I closed the conversation, opened my laptop, and typed 3 simple words: solo beach resort. It was time to vanish on my terms. The next morning, Riverside felt heavier than usual. Even the sky seemed indifferent, washed in a dull shade of grey, like it knew something had soured. I packed light, just 1 suitcase, and 1 silent promise. This time, I won't be the one holding the weight. My flight to Maui wasn't spontaneous. It was deliberate, precise, first class, oceanfront, spa included. For the first time, I wasn't budgeting for someone else's emergency. I wasn't putting my name on another rent transfer or rearranging my schedule to drive through the night for Ethan's latest self-inflicted crisis. I was investing in peace. As the plane ascended above the clouds, I kept my phone on airplane mode, not just literally, but emotionally. I was done being reachable, done being available for people who only remembered me when things caught fire. My seatmate, a retiree on her 3rd honeymoon, asked if I was travelling alone. Yes, I said, with a softness that felt like freedom. And I wouldn't have it any other way. When we landed, a sleek black SUV was waiting. The driver smiled and greeted me by name, towel in hand, bottled water chilled. I hadn't even asked. It was all taken care of because this time I had taken care of it. The resort was like a dream someone finally decided I deserved. Vaulted ceilings, teakwood floors, waves humming in the distance. The front desk staff handed me a key and said, "Welcome back, Miss Clara." I chuckled. "This is my first time here," she smiled knowingly. "We hope it won't be the last." Neither do I thought. That night, wrapped in a cotton robe on my private balcony, I stared at the moon spilling silver across the sea. My phone buzzed once. Ethan's wedding was tomorrow, but I didn't open the message. Instead, I posted a photo, feet on a lounger, cocktail in hand, oceans stretching endlessly beyond. Caption: "They said I was hard to cut from the guest list. I say I found the better view." And just like that, I was no longer their background character. I was writing my own story. And this chapter didn't include them. I didn't plan on checking my phone. Truly, I told myself I wouldn't. But something about the way the morning sun slipped through the white curtains warm, careless, indifferent, made me curious. It was still early in Maui, just past 7. I had a lavender latte in one hand, my toes dug gently into the cold tile of my suite's balcony, and the Pacific humming a low lullaby. I was at peace. And then it buzzed. Once, twice, then it didn't stop. At first, I let it keep going. I had no interest in slipping back into the noise, but the name flashing across the screen was unfamiliar. Natalie. I stared at it for a moment, the way you'd stare at a door that shouldn't be open. Natalie was Ethan's ex's younger sister. Smart, quiet, kind eyes at family functions. We hadn't spoken in years. Her message was just 3 words. Clara. It happened. I stared at it, trying to guess what it was. But before I could even type back, another notification came. Then another. This time, it was Lena, my cousin. One of the few people in our bloodline who still had both empathy and functioning neurons. You're not going to believe this. Ethan's wedding just imploded. Rachel's gone. Dad's losing it. I set my coffee down, exhaled slowly. I didn't feel panic, just curiosity. That peculiar interest one feels when a predictable fire finally lights itself. I opened Lena's next message. Apparently, Rachel found out Ethan had been texting his ex. She stormed out right after the vows. Didn't even make it to the toast. Grandpa stood up in front of everyone and said, "That's karma for cutting Clara out." Dad turned red, tried to hush him. It only got worse. I laughed, not cruelly, just softly, like the sound of something breaking in slow motion that you've watched crack for years. Rachel had walked out. My brother, Mr. Golden Child, Mr. Everyone Bends for me, had been publicly abandoned at his own $40,000 dream wedding. And somehow, I wasn't surprised, because Ethan always danced on the edge of consequences, believing someone else would pay the bill when the music stopped. Usually, that someone was me, not this time. My phone kept lighting up Dad, unknown numbers, even Rachel's mother, bizarrely enough. Then one from Grandpa himself. "You were the only one who kept that boy grounded." I said it loud and proud today. They deserved every second. I felt something stir in my chest. Not pride, not vengeance, just validation. For so long, I'd been the invisible string holding my family together. You never notice the thread until it snaps. I opened Instagram. There, in real time, the perfect wedding was unraveling. Rachel's wedding planner had deleted all the photos from her story. The videographer's teaser was replaced with a generic ad. And Ethan? Silent. No posts, no tags, not even a selfie. The groom had been ghosted. Another message came in. "Dad, Clara, call me. This is serious. We need you. Ethan needs you." I nearly dropped the phone laughing. Needs me? Funny, because last week I wasn't even worth a seat at the back table. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Instead, I posted a photo, the Maui coast behind me, a tray of fresh papaya and dragon fruit, my sunglasses reflecting the sky. Caption, sometimes, silence is the loudest answer. Not 5 minutes later, my inbox exploded. Natalie messaged again. Ethan's blaming Dad. Dad's blaming Rachel's friends. Rachel's family blamed Ethan's flirty behavior at the rehearsal dinner. Lena swears. Aunt Bonnie cried in the bathroom. Grandpa told everyone, "You reap what you sow." I could almost see it. Napkins flying, heels breaking, champagne splashing as the fantasy crumbled. A video link came in next. It was blurry, chaotic, clearly filmed by a wedding guest who had no business being that close to the drama. In it, Rachel is screaming at Ethan. Someone in the background is shouting, "Where's Clara now?" And Grandpa's voice cuts clean through. "You threw her out." And the universe threw it right back. I watched the clip twice, then closed my phone. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't anything, really, except finally free. Because here's the truth. The real revenge isn't rage. It isn't shouting or storming out. It's absence. It's walking away so completely that your lack becomes louder than your presence ever was. And that's what I had become. A silence so strong they couldn't stop hearing it. They didn't stop. By noon, my phone had become a siren. Buzz, ding, vibrate, pause, again and again. It didn't matter if I silenced it, flipped its screen down, or tucked it into a drawer beneath my resort robe. They found ways to reach me. Voicemails, emails, Instagram DMs, even a notification on my old LinkedIn account from Dad. Urgent. Please call. That one made me laugh out loud. as if my career network was the proper place to beg the daughter you just cut out of the family. I took a deep breath and pressed play on the first voicemail. Dad's voice came through, strained and sharp. Clara, this is ridiculous. You're being childish. I know you're mad, but Ethan's hurting. The wedding's a disaster. Rachel's not answering him. You should be here. This is your family. Ah, yes, the classic guilt trip. You weren't important enough to invite, but you're crucial enough to fix what fell apart. I listened to the second voicemail. This one was from Ethan. His voice was broken in a way I'd never heard before, like someone who finally realized his golden ticket had expired. Clara, I messed up. I should have told Dad to include you. Rachel thought it would be easier if we kept it small. I didn't fight back. I was tired. I thought you'd understand, but I need you now. Please call me. I paused, thumb hovering over the delete button. Need me now? When you were booking the $3,000 violinist, you didn't think I'd want to be there. When you handpicked your high school poker buddy over your own sister, you didn't think I'd feel it. Now, after the bride vanishes, the centerpieces get trashed, and Grandpa drops truth bombs in front of 120 guests. I'm your emotional janitor again. Not anymore. I scrolled through the missed messages like I was flipping through a catalogue of regrets. Please, Clara. It's Natalie. They're falling apart. This whole thing is unraveling. Your dad's yelling at the vendors now. Rachel's mum slapped Ethan, like literally slapped him twice. People are asking why you weren't there, Grandpa said. Clara was the glue. You threw her out. Now you're all unglued. A long message from Lena caught my eye. Clara, you were right to walk away. But I just wanted you to know, when Ethan ran off crying into the parking lot, your dad turned and blamed Rachel's parents. Rachel screamed, "Your whole family is toxic." Then Grandpa stood up again and said, "You all owe Clara an apology. You turned your back on her and now the world's turned its back on you." I set the phone down and let the words sit like waves in my chest. Apology. It was funny. That word never once came from Ethan's mouth before the wedding. Not when he leaned on me for money. Not when I stayed up on the phone with him after breakups, hangovers, existential spirals. Not when I skipped my own medical conference to help him move. And now that his picture-perfect wedding crumbled like stale cake, he suddenly discovered the language of regret. I stood and walked down to the beach. The sand was warm, soft. The air smelled of salt and hibiscus. Maui, in every breath, reminded me of what peace sounded like when it wasn't begging for permission. At the edge of the water, a resort staff member approached with a polite smile. "Miss Clara, we're setting up sunset meditation if you'd like to join." I smiled back. "No, thank you. I think I'll just stay here a while longer." They nodded and left me to the rhythm of the waves. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail. "Dad, you don't just get to abandon your family because you're mad. That's not how this works. Ethan's your brother. We're your people. You're being selfish." There it was. The old script dusted off and performed like a family classic. Clara, the responsible one, the strong one, the forgiving one, the one who never yells, never runs, never chooses herself. Until now. I picked up the phone, typed a reply, deleted it. Then I opened my gallery and selected a photo. The view from the waterline sunset, blazing over the horizon like fire melting into waves. I added a caption. "Sometimes choosing peace looks like abandonment to those who thrived on your silence." I posted it. Blocked Ethan, blocked Dad, blocked the noise. My silence wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. A long overdue echo of every time I showed up for them while they looked right through me. I didn't need their apologies. When the final messages came, I knew this was the end. The sun was slipping behind the horizon, casting golden light across the ocean, as if to affirm my decision. The shadows lengthened, creeping across my balcony, the waves now quietly lapping at the shore beneath me. It had been almost a week since the wedding fell apart. The chaos back home had been relentless. Ethan's phone calls, Dad's angry texts. Even Rachel had reached out through a mutual friend, trying to apologize, but nothing they said or did mattered anymore. I was done. And the funny part, It wasn't a moment of clarity that led me to this decision. No, it was the quiet realization that I didn't need them to define me anymore. I thought of the last voicemail from Dad, the one where he blamed me for being selfish. The audacity of it, really. Clara, this is how families work. You can't just walk away. We need you. I'd heard it 100 times before. I'd heard it the day I drove across state lines to pick up Ethan after his third breakup, when I bailed him out financially, or when I spent nights talking him off the ledge of his latest panic attack. But in that moment, listening to his voice crack, the tightness in my chest loosened. I was no longer bound to their expectations. I no longer needed to prove I was strong. I didn't owe anyone anything. I sat on the balcony, letting the night fall around me. I was alone, completely alone, and it felt like the first breath I'd taken in years. The text from Ethan arrived shortly after. He hadn't learned yet. It was the same message, just wrapped in a different coat. Clara, I'm really sorry for what happened. I didn't mean for things to end like this. But you're my sister. I need you back. This time, I didn't pause. I didn't debate. I didn't overthink, I replied. No, not anymore. You only need me when your world falls apart. But I'm not your backup anymore. I'm not anyone's fallback. Then I blocked him. I blocked Dad. I blocked Lena, who had become the messenger for their guilt. I erased the threads that still connected me to the family that always took without giving back. I had been invisible for so long, even when I tried to make myself visible. It wasn't about pride anymore. It was about self-respect and self-love. I walked to the bathroom, running the warm water of the shower. As I stripped off the hotel robe, I let the water pour over me, each drop a little cleansing moment, washing away the years of guilt, the years of sacrifice. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I didn't need to apologize for putting myself first. This wasn't about leaving them behind. This was about finally deciding that my life was my own. When I stepped out of the shower wrapped in a thick towel, I walked back to the living area. The view was stunning. The horizon was still burning with the last whispers of daylight. I sat down on the plush couch, letting the soft cushions sink beneath me. I hadn't let myself enjoy moments like this before. I had always been the one to rush, always looking back over my shoulder, wondering if someone else needed me, always half present in my own life, trying to be everything for everyone. But now, as I settled into the silence of this room, it became clear to me this was my life. And I was free to live it on my own terms. No more walking on eggshells. No more making myself small for others to feel big. No more apologies. No more compromises. I reached for my phone one last time. I took a picture of the sunset, its hues so vibrant, so rich, like it was bursting with everything I had been holding back for so long. I posted it, along with a simple caption, I survived being cut out. Now I'm learning to live without needing to be anything but myself. And with that, I shut off my phone for good. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in forever. I spent the entire morning at the spa. I basked in the indulgence of self-care, something I had long neglected. I had always put my family's needs ahead of my own, but now I was relearning what it meant to be kind to myself. In the afternoon, I walked barefoot along the beach, feeling the sand between my toes, the cool ocean breeze tousling my hair. I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I wasn't wondering if I was doing the right thing, because I knew in my bones that this was the only thing I could do for myself. Ethan's wedding might have crumbled, but I was building something that would last, a life I could be proud of, a life I could truly call my own. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I was at peace, completely at peace. And that was the real victory. That's the end of Clara's journey. Her family may never understand her decision, and maybe they don't need to, because Clara chose herself for the first time. And in doing so, she finally found her own happiness, free from guilt and obligation. I hope this brings clarity to the emotional depth and finality of her transformation. Would you like a different perspective on any part of the story, or perhaps a recap of any details? Story 2. I wasn't planning on going to Bianca's baby shower. Not because we weren't close, although that was definitely part of it, but because deep down, I had a gut feeling she had an ulterior motive. Bianca never did anything without a reason. I guess I should have known better. When the invitation showed up in the mail, all pink and gold with some overly sentimental note saying, "Wouldn't be the same without you," I just tossed it aside. It had been years since Bianca and I had anything resembling a sisterly bond. I wasn't pretending anymore. It wasn't just growing apart. Bianca had cut me off deliberately. But then there was Carla. Carla and I used to be close, but she was also Bianca's best friend, which meant she was always caught in the middle. 2 days before the shower, she called. Her voice was a mix of careful hesitation and urgency. "You're coming, right?" I hesitated. "I don't know, Carla. It's weird," she sighed, but I could hear the quiet insistence. "Please, just trust me. Come." I frowned at the phone, confused. "Do you know something I don't?" There was no explanation, just come. So I did. The event hall was decorated in typical Bianca style, soft pinks, creams, and gold accents. It practically screamed, "Bianca always gets what she wants." The whole room smelled like roses and vanilla candles, the kind that made my head spin. I walked in alone, holding a small gift, a baby blanket I had grabbed at the last minute. The kind of thing you get when you feel obligated but have no idea what's really going on. I wasn't sure why I even bought it. I spotted my mother first. She approached me with that same tight-lipped smile, the one that meant she was bracing herself for something. "You made it," she said, her voice flat. I shrugged. Bianca invited me. She exhaled through her nose, like she wanted to say something but decided against it. Instead, she waved toward the buffet. "There's food," she said, as if that was the reason I'd shown up. Then Bianca appeared, glowing like a perfectly polished porcelain doll, wearing a white maternity dress that made her look almost too perfect, like someone who spent hours curating her image. "Sis," she said with a grin that seemed too wide for the moment, "I didn't think you'd actually come." Her tone was light, casual, almost like we were childhood best friends who had never stopped talking. My stomach twisted in response. "Well, here I am," I said flatly. She tilted her head, studying me with that calculating look she always had. Without missing a beat, she looped her arm around mine. "I'm glad it's a big day." I didn't trust her. I couldn't. Carla appeared beside me then, drink in hand, her gaze flickering between us. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but laced with concern. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just waiting for the cake." Carla frowned, confused. "The cake?" I just shook my head. It wasn't really about the cake, not at all. It was the announcement. I could feel it coming, some twisted revelation that Bianca had been planning for months. The afternoon dragged on. Baby shower games, mindless chatter, fake smiles. I played along, nodding when I had to, smiling when expected, but I was numb, detached. Bianca finally stood up, her glass raised, clinking it with a fork to draw everyone's attention. It worked. Silence spread across the room like wildfire. "I have something to share," she said, her voice smooth and confident. My stomach churned. Something in her tone made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "I've been keeping a secret," she continued, placing a hand on her belly, "and now seems like the perfect time to tell the truth." Her smile curled, slow and knowing, like she was savouring the moment. My pulse quickened, a sinking feeling spreading through me. "The father of my baby is Julian." Everything froze. For a split second, all I could hear was my own ragged breathing. It was too loud, too uneven. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to break free. Someone gasped. My mother's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Carla's eyes widened, filled with shock. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at Bianca, trying to process the words that had just come out of her mouth. My husband, my dead husband. She was still talking some nonsense about connection, how it wasn't planned. But I couldn't hear her. My mind had shut down. The words kept repeating in my head, Julian. My husband, I snapped. I couldn't keep pretending. I pushed my chair back with a sharp screech, the noise slicing through the tense silence. Carla reached for me, her voice low and urgent. Hey. I shrugged her off, my tone eerily calm. Wait for the cake. Bianca's smile faltered. Confusion flashed in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to react like this. She had wanted a scene. She wanted me to scream, cry, beg for answers. But I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. I turned to the baker, who had been waiting by the cake, knife in hand. Cut it, I said. The baker hesitated, then did as I asked, slicing through the soft frosting. And then it happened. Inside the cake, hidden between layers of frosting, was a folded sheet of laminated paper. Bianca's face twisted in confusion, her perfect mask cracking. She lunged toward it, but Carla got there first. She grabbed the paper and read it aloud, her voice shaking. The DNA results confirm that the father of Bianca's baby is your father. There was a collective gasp. Bianca's face drained of colour, her body going rigid. She shook her head violently, a desperate no escaping her lips, but the truth was staring her in the face. The sheet didn't lie. My mother screamed, the sound ripping through the air like a knife. My father stumbled backward, his face drained of colour. And Bianca? She collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, watching the destruction unfold. I didn't feel anything, no sadness, no anger, just satisfaction. Quiet satisfaction. The truth was out. Finally, without a word, I picked up my purse, turned to Carla, and said simply, "Drinks." Carla, still in shock, nodded. Drinks. And we walked out of that disaster together. As we left, I could hear the chaos behind us, but I didn't turn around. The weight of everything was sinking in, but it didn't hit me the way I thought it would. I was supposed to feel triumphant, but there was no sense of victory. Instead, it felt like I was walking away from a funeral, not one I was mourning, but one I had caused. I didn't even want to think about it too much. All I knew was that I had to get out. Carla walked beside me, her eyes darting between the door behind us and me, clearly still processing everything that had just gone down. I felt a small part of me wanting to reassure her, but I didn't know what to say. How do you explain the devastation of your family unraveling in front of you? How do you even begin to make sense of something so messy? Do you think they'll ever come back from this? Carla asked, breaking the silence. I glanced at her, and for the first time, I saw the genuine concern in her eyes. She didn't deserve to be dragged into this, but Bianca had a way of doing that to people. I don't know, but I don't think I want to stick around to find out, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. Yeah, fair enough, Carla muttered, rubbing her temple like she had a headache, which I understood completely. I was in no place to deal with the fallout. It wasn't even the revelation itself that bothered me anymore. It was everything that had led to this. Bianca's carefully constructed world had collapsed, and now I was the one left standing. We got to my car, and I slid into the driver's seat, the cool leather beneath me offering no comfort. Carla followed, the door slamming a little harder than necessary. "So, what now?" she asked, her eyes still wide. She was trying to process it all, and I didn't blame her. "Now? Now we go somewhere quiet," I said. My voice was steady, but there was a coldness creeping in that hadn't been there before. "I just need some space." We drove in silence, the hum of the engine filling the gaps between our thoughts. I wasn't ready to go home, not to my place, not to any of it. So I drove us to the nearest bar, a dive where no one knew our names and no one asked questions. I needed that anonymity. The bartender, a grizzled guy who must have been working there for ages, didn't ask what happened or why we looked like we'd just escaped from a disaster. He just poured us both a drink, and that was all we needed. Carla took a long sip of her beer, staring into her glass. deep in thought. I could tell she was still processing everything. I was too. "You were pretty calm back there," Carla finally said, looking over at me with a raised brow. Most people would have flipped out. I shrugged. "I guess I've had my fill of surprises." Carla laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Yeah, no kidding. It felt like we were both just waiting for the other shoe to drop, but we didn't know what it would look like." I didn't know what came next. Bianca had blown up our family with a single sentence, and now everything was in pieces. What was left to salvage? "Do you think your mum will ever forgive her?" Carla asked. I frowned. "I don't know. I don't think she can. This isn't something you get over. Not easily." My mother had always been the calm, collected one, the one who kept everything together even when it all fell apart. But today I saw her break, not in front of Bianca, but in front of all of us. It was like watching a dam burst. "She always tried to protect Bianca," I continued, almost to myself, "and now she's just shattered." Carla didn't say anything after that. She didn't need to. We both knew that no matter what happened from here, nothing would ever be the same. It was strange. I had spent so many years being angry at Bianca for everything she'd done to me, how she'd manipulated me, how she'd taken what was mine without even a second thought. I never thought about how she might feel. She'd always had everything, but now she had nothing. I hated her, I really did, but I didn't know if I could feel the satisfaction I thought I'd get from seeing her destroyed. The bartender brought us a second round, and I downed it in one go. The burn of the liquor was the only thing that grounded me. I needed it. We both did. "Do you think she knew?" I asked Carla after a long pause. "Do you think she knew about my dad?" Carla shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly caught off guard by the question. "I don't know, but it doesn't matter now, does it?" "I guess not," I said quietly. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. But what was worse, the fact that she did know, or the fact that she didn't? That she had been completely blindsided by everything, just like the rest of us. I didn't have the answers. I didn't think I would for a long time. As the evening wore on, Carla and I talked about everything and nothing. We filled the space with empty chatter, trying to escape the weight of the day. I knew it wasn't going to last. Tomorrow, Bianca would be back, trying to spin things in her favour, trying to twist the truth to her advantage. But for tonight, I just needed the quiet. I could hear the echo of Bianca's confession still hanging in the air, thick with the kind of silence that only happens after something that can never be undone. Finally, when it felt like the right time, I looked over at Carla. "I think I need to go home now." She nodded. "Yeah, let's get out of here." As we walked out into the cool night air, I realized that nothing had changed. Not really. Bianca had tried to destroy me, but in the end, she had destroyed herself. I just hadn't realized how little that victory meant until now. Tomorrow was another day, and the world would keep turning. But for tonight, I felt empty. I had won, but I hadn't expected this kind of cost. We didn't say much on the drive back, both of us lost in our thoughts. I didn't know what was next, but I knew one thing. I had to be ready for whatever Bianca threw at me next. And I was. The next few days passed in a haze, a mix of disbelief and numbness. Everything felt like it had been flipped upside down, and I couldn't seem to find my footing. I hadn't spoken to my mum or Bianca since the shower. Bianca, I knew, would be in damage control mode, trying to spin everything in her favour. But I didn't care. The truth was out, and I had done what I needed to do. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. But my mum? That was different. I hadn't heard from her either, and I wasn't sure how to bridge the gap between us. When we'd left that day, it felt like we were both caught in a storm that neither of us could control. I knew she was devastated hell. I was too, but I wasn't ready to face her yet. I spent the first day holed up at home, just trying to sort through the mess in my head. Carla had texted a few times, checking in, making sure I was okay, but it all felt so overwhelming. The weight of the family's collapse was heavy, and no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I couldn't escape the fact that the ground beneath me had shifted. Bianca's betrayal was one thing, but the fact that she'd done it with my father, that was a whole other level of destruction. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I didn't think about how long I'd been sitting in the dark until my phone buzzed. It was Carla, again, asking if I wanted to meet for coffee. I hesitated, then sighed, realizing it was probably better to face the world instead of hiding away. "Yeah, coffee sounds good," I texted back. "Let's meet." When I walked into the cafe, Carla was already sitting at a corner table, her head down, studying the menu like it could offer her some kind of answer to the mess we were all in. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes tired but kind, and I couldn't help but feel a little relieved to see her there. At least she understood. At least she wasn't asking me to explain everything. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Carla said softly as I sat down across from her. "Yeah, well," I said, my voice dry, "I kind of feel like I have." We sat in silence for a few moments before the waiter came over. We ordered our drinks, nothing fancy, just something to get us through the awkward silence that hung between us. Carla was the first to speak again, her voice quieter than usual. "How's your mum holding up?" I didn't know how to answer that. How could I? My mother was strong, always had been, but this was too much. How could I even begin to understand what she was going through? "I don't know," I said, rubbing my temple. "I haven't talked to her. Not since everything happened." Carla nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "I get it. It's hard, especially with everything you've been through. But have you thought about reaching out? I'm not saying you should forgive her, but just, I don't know, maybe let her know you're still there?" The words stung more than I expected. I hadn't even considered it. My own pain had been so consuming that I hadn't thought about my mum's side of things, how she was probably hurting too. "I don't even know what to say to her," I admitted, my voice raw. "Everything she's worked for, everything she thought was real, it's all shattered. I don't know how to be the one to fix it." Carla leaned forward, her eyes serious now. "You're not supposed to fix it though, you don't have to carry that weight. But you could start by just showing up, you know? Let her know you're not abandoning her, even if everything feels broken right now." I sat there, staring at my coffee, her words settling deep in my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe it wasn't about fixing anything. Maybe it was about not walking away from the people I still had left. "I'll think about it," I said finally, though I wasn't sure if I could make myself do it just yet. The conversation shifted to lighter topics after that. We talked about random stuff, work, old friends, plans for the future. It was all distractions, but it felt good to talk about something else for a change. But the thoughts of my family never quite left my mind. Bianca was still out there, probably licking her wounds and plotting her next move. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to play the victim, even though she was the one who had destroyed everything. But that was the thing with Bianca. She always made it look like she was the one being hurt, even when she was the one doing the damage. That night, after I got home, I sat down and stared at my phone for a while, unsure of what to do. I could feel the pull to check in on Bianca, to see if she was reaching out, but I resisted. I had nothing left to say to her. I wasn't interested in the excuses she would try to spin. But as I looked at the empty space around me, I realized I couldn't ignore it forever. Bianca's betrayal had shattered something, and even though I had exposed her lies, the fallout wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I scrolled through my messages. There was a text from my mother. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew this conversation was coming, but I hadn't been ready for it. I hadn't figured out how to face her, let alone face the truth of everything she was going through. I stared at the message for a long time before finally typing out a response. "I'll come by later." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe we couldn't fix everything overnight, but I had to try. For her, for me, and for what was left of the family we used to be. As I put my phone down, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But maybe, just maybe, we could start picking up the pieces. Together. I showed up at my mum's house later that day. The house felt too quiet when I stepped inside. The kind of quiet that makes everything feel a little too heavy. My mum was in the living room, sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She was always the strong one, the rock of the family. But now, Now, she was just a person broken by the weight of betrayal. When she saw me, there was a brief flash of relief in her eyes, but it quickly faded, replaced by the exhaustion of everything that had happened. I sat down next to her, unsure of where to start. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable, like we both knew that no words could fix what was broken. "You've been avoiding me," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not knowing how to explain that I hadn't been avoiding her, I just hadn't known how to face her. Not with everything we had lost, not with what Bianca had done. I didn't know how to. "Talk to you, Mom," I admitted, my voice tight. "It's all so messed up. I don't know how to even begin." She sighed, her eyes filled with more pain than I had ever seen in them. "I know," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know what to do either." We sat there for a moment, just letting the weight of everything settle. No one was rushing to speak. We were both trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together. But the truth was, we didn't know how. I wasn't sure I even wanted to. Do you think she knew?" My mum asked, her voice barely audible. I didn't need to ask who she was talking about. Bianca. The question was always there, lingering in the air. Did she know about Dad? Had she been so blinded by her own desires that she never saw what was happening? Or was she playing the victim too? The thought made me sick. "I don't know," I said honestly. I think she didn't. I think she was just caught up in whatever world she had built for herself. My mum nodded, her face twisted with something that looked like disgust. "I always tried to protect her. Tried to protect both of you, but now I feel like I've failed." I reached over and put my hand on hers. "You didn't fail. You couldn't have known. No one could have." She squeezed my hand, but there was no reassurance in her grip. It felt more like an apology, like she was trying to make up for something that wasn't her fault. "But I let her hurt you," she said, her voice thick with guilt. "I let her destroy what we had." I shook my head. "You didn't let her do anything. She made her choices, and we're just left to deal with the consequences." A long silence followed. I could feel the weight of the words hanging in the room. What else was there to say? We both knew the truth now. Bianca had torn us apart, but the damage had been done by her, not by us. "I know you're angry," my mum said after a while. "I'm angry too. I don't know how to move forward from this. I'm angry." "Yeah," I said, my voice rough. "But it's not just about being angry anymore. It's about figuring out what comes next." My mum wiped at her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. I never thought it would come to this. I never thought he would betray me like this." Her words hit me like a punch. She hadn't even said it out loud yet, but we both knew. My father. She was finally acknowledging the truth of it. It wasn't just Bianca's betrayal. It was his too. "I know," I said, my throat tight. "I know, Mum. It's all messed up. But we have to face it. We have to face him too." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with something deeper than pain, something like resignation. "I don't know how to look at him anymore. I don't know how to share a life with someone who could do something like that." I didn't know what to say to that. What could I say? Nothing would make it easier. Nothing would make it feel okay. But at least we were talking about it. At least we were facing the reality of what had happened. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her. "About not walking away. I don't know if I can forgive Bianca for what she's done, but I'm not going to walk away from you." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for some sign of certainty. "You don't have to, honey. You don't have to fix anything. I just need you here. Just don't leave me too." I nodded, my chest tight with emotion. "I'm not going anywhere, Mom. Not now. Not ever." We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of before. It was the kind of quiet where two people who have been through hell together can just breathe. "I'm scared," she said, her voice small. "I don't know what to do with all this. I don't know how to fix it." "You don't have to fix it," I told her. "We'll figure it out. Together." That was all we had left. Together. And that was enough. Later that evening, I went back home. There was still so much to sort through, but for the first time in days, I felt like I was on the right path. Bianca had shattered us, but in a strange way, she had also brought us back together. In the end, she'd broken everything except for the one thing that really mattered. family. Even if it looked different now, even if it felt like we were starting over, we still had each other. And maybe that was enough. I picked up my phone and sent Carla a quick text. Thanks for being there. I'll keep you posted, she replied almost immediately. Anytime. You're not alone in this, I smiled. Maybe things would never be the same, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't need them to be. Story 3. Growing up, I felt like I was invisible to my parents. My sister, Sarah, was the golden child. Her achievements were celebrated, like they were the only things that mattered. For me, nothing I did was ever enough. I wasn't the perfect child they wanted, and they made that abundantly clear. My entire existence seemed to be about them trying to fix me. It started early. When I was just 4, my parents had me tested. The results were a slap in the face. I had lower levels of testosterone, which they decided was a problem that needed fixing. So, instead of supporting me, they threw my sister, Sarah, into the spotlight as a solution. They even made it clear that she was the one they expected to fix everything about me. By the time I was 12, I had already accepted that I would never be good enough in their eyes. It wasn't like I wasn't trying. One Christmas, when I was 12, both Sarah and I asked for new bikes. She got a beautiful, shiny purple bike with big wheels and all the bells and whistles. As for me, I got a cheap pink t-shirt with the words Sarah's little bro printed on it. I should have been used to it by now, but the disappointment still stung. Their solution to my issues, or rather their treatment, was simple: destroy my self-worth so that I could rebuild myself into something better. Of course, this backfired. I spiraled into depression and anxiety, but they didn't care. Their cruel method eventually morphed into blatant favoritism, and emotional neglect followed. I'll never forget the time Sarah came home with a B on her report card. My parents threw her a celebration, complete with a banner that read, "Our daughter got a B." Meanwhile, when I brought home straight A's, I got nothing. They trashed my room because I didn't get straight A+. Nothing was ever enough. As I grew older, things didn't get better. When I was accepted into a decent university with a partial scholarship, my parents still found a way to be disappointed. "Why didn't you get a full scholarship?" they asked, as if I hadn't already worked my arse off. Meanwhile, Sarah dropped out of college to take a gap year, which conveniently stretched to 5 years. To celebrate, they threw her a party and bought her a new laptop for her creative journey. I couldn't take it anymore. I moved out as soon as I could, working multiple jobs while studying just to support myself. But even with distance, they still found ways to make me feel like I didn't matter. When I couldn't afford to come home for Thanksgiving one year, my dad's comment was, "I guess your priorities are elsewhere." My graduation wasn't any better. My parents arrived late, and the first thing my dad said was, 4 years for that degree? Seems like a lot of time for what you'll be doing." It was hard enough to hear that, but then they turned all their attention to Sarah. She wore the most extravagant dress to my graduation, making sure she was the center of attention. It was typical of her, but it didn't hurt any less. Despite everything, I tried to maintain a relationship with Sarah. She was my sister, after all, but it was always one-sided. Every time I tried to reach out, she either ignored me or turned the conversation into a competition. If I got a promotion, suddenly she had an incredible opportunity. If I started dating someone, she was in a relationship too within minutes. It was exhausting, and things didn't get better. One day, I called her to share the news that I had been promoted to senior analyst. There was a long pause before she responded with a dry, "Okay, anyway, I just got approached by this amazing startup. The salary is probably more than you'll ever make." It was classic Sarah. When I landed my dream job after years of hard work, I made the mistake of mentioning it at a family dinner. My mum immediately interrupted, saying, "Oh, that's nice. But did you hear about Sarah?" She met this incredibly successful entrepreneur with connections everywhere. It was the same story over and over. Sarah got a pass for everything, while I was constantly criticized for things I had no control over. But everything changed when I met Josephine. I met her at one of Sarah's endless housewarming parties. She and her husband, Dwight, moved constantly, each time to a bigger, more expensive place, always funded by my parents. Josephine was standing by herself near a bookshelf, looking just as out of place as I felt. She had shoulder-length brown hair, intelligent green eyes, and a smile that made me forget my name. She wasn't a fan of these kinds of parties either. Not much of a party person, she said, sipping her wine. Not much of a Sarah's World person, I replied, before I could stop myself. Instead of being put off, she laughed. Ah, you must be the mysterious brother, the one with the conventional life choices. We spent the rest of the evening in that corner, talking about everything from classic literature to our shared love of terrible sci-fi movies. By the end of the night, I had her number and a date planned for the following weekend. As our relationship developed, things took a familiar turn. My parents, predictably, made snide comments about Josephine, as if she was somehow settling for someone like me. She's so cultured and well-travelled, my mum remarked after meeting Josephine. It's surprising she's interested in someone so local, but that wasn't even the worst of it. Sarah started showing an odd interest in my relationship with Josephine. She would call me out of the blue, supposedly to catch up, but every conversation would turn into questions about Josephine, her job, her family, her hobbies. Josephine once mentioned she might be transferred to the New York office, and Sarah, without me saying a word, casually dropped, "That would be hard on your relationship, wouldn't it?" At the time, I thought maybe Sarah cared, but looking back, I realised I should have seen the signs. Things took a darker turn after Josephine and I moved in together. Our apartment wasn't fancy, but it was ours. We decorated it ourselves, painted the walls, assembled IKEA furniture, and created a home that felt like a sanctuary. For once, I felt content. I thought I was finally getting the life I'd always wanted: a good job, a loving partner, and maybe even kids one day. I proposed on our 5th anniversary with a quiet dinner at home. I'd saved for months to get her the perfect ring, an emerald that matched her eyes, set in white gold. I hid it in her favourite dessert, a chocolate soufflé that I'd spent weeks perfecting. When she found the ring, her eyes filled with tears, and before I could even ask the question, she whispered, "Yes, we planned a long engagement. There was no rush. We had our whole lives ahead of us." Or so I thought. When we told my family, the reactions were telling. My mum plastered on a fake smile, saying how nice it was, though her tone suggested anything but. My dad grunted and muttered, "We'll see," before turning back to his football game. But Sarah's reaction was the strangest. She congratulated us, but her smile was weird, almost predatory. "Let me see the ring," she demanded, grabbing Josephine's hand. She examined it with a critical eye. "Oh, it's cute. Simple, I guess. That's more your style anyway." Later, the first overheard my mum telling Josephine, "Don't rush into anything, dear. You're still young, and there are plenty of opportunities out there for someone like you." The implication was clear. I wasn't one of those opportunities. Little did I know my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. As Josephine and I settled into our routine, life seemed to be exactly what I had hoped for. We spent our weekends exploring new places, grabbing dinner with friends, or simply staying in and watching movies. Things were good. I thought that maybe, just maybe, I had finally escaped the mess my family had made of my life. But that feeling of contentment didn't last long. It started slowly, little things that I brushed off at first. Josephine, who had always been the epitome of calm, started acting differently. She became glued to her phone, always texting or checking messages, often looking nervous when I asked about her day. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, we were both busy with work, and I'd heard stories of couples going through phases where they didn't communicate as well. Maybe it was just that. But then, things got weird. Josephine started avoiding our date nights, suggesting work commitments or last-minute errands. One night, I proposed a weekend getaway to Maine, something we'd been talking about for ages. "I don't know if I can get away right now," she said, her eyes darting to her phone. The Johnson account is really demanding. I understood, though part of me felt like something was off. It wasn't just the excuses, it was how they felt, more and more like her way of pushing me away. Then came the night that changed everything. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. I stumbled into the living room, bleary-eyed, and found Josephine huddled on the couch, whispering intensely into her phone. When she saw me, she jumped like she'd been caught. "Sorry, did I wake you?" she asked, tucking her phone away quickly. "Just checking in with Sarah about the bridesmaids' dresses." I nodded, but something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. Who calls about dresses at 2 a.m? And why was she acting so nervous? I didn't say anything more, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The strange behaviour continued for weeks. She started showing an odd interest in Sarah and Dwight's lives, asking questions about them that were out of character. One evening, she casually mentioned, "We should have dinner with Sarah and Dwight this weekend." I ran into Dwight at that coffee shop near my office yesterday. He mentioned a new restaurant they wanted to try. Now, I knew Dwight's routine. He wasn't the type to visit coffee shops near Sarah's office, especially not 30 minutes away. But I didn't push it at the time, thinking I was just overthinking things. Maybe Josephine was finally making an effort to get along with my family, I thought. After all, they never really made much of an effort with her, but things started to escalate. A few months ago, Josephine had been acting strange, moodier than usual, irritable, and constantly nauseous. I got my hopes up, thinking maybe she was pregnant. We hadn't been trying, but we had discussed it before. I started imagining the idea of helping her through the morning sickness, picking out nursery colours, and building a future together. One morning, I found her throwing up in the bathroom. I held her hair back and rubbed her shoulders soothingly. "Do you think we should get a test?" I asked, trying to contain my excitement. "No," she said quickly, her face filled with panic. "I mean, it's probably just a stomach bug or food poisoning." But the symptoms persisted. She avoided wine, turned green at the smell of coffee, and took frequent naps. I thought maybe she was just in the early stages, not wanting to admit it yet. I started leaving pregnancy books on her nightstand, prenatal vitamins bookmarked on her laptop, even started researching pediatricians in our area. I was getting excited. "You'd be such an amazing mum," I told her one evening as we cuddled on the couch. "Our kid would be so lucky to have you." She burst into tears and rushed to the bathroom. I assumed it was just hormones and gave her space. But then, one night, she sat me down, her face streaked with tears. She dropped the bombshell. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. I froze. My heart sank into my stomach. We hadn't been intimate much lately with our busy schedules, so I didn't expect this, especially not like this. "But it's not yours," she said, her voice shaking with guilt. The world seemed to stop. I could barely breathe. My mind couldn't process the words. "Not mine." I stared at her in disbelief. "Who?" I managed to croak out. "It's Dwight's," she whispered, almost breaking as she said it. My blood ran cold. "Dwight? My sister's husband?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to happen. It just did." The room seemed to spin as I tried to make sense of it. "Dwight. My sister's husband." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. My chest tightened, and I felt like I was going to suffocate. How could this happen? How had she betrayed me like this? "How long?" I asked, my voice flat, empty. 3 months, she replied, staring at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. I remembered that party, the one that marked the beginning of everything. It was my parents' 40th anniversary, a lavish affair that my parents had spent months planning. Josephine had looked stunning in a blue dress, and I had been so proud to have her by my side. I remembered how she had disappeared for almost an hour, claiming the room was too warm and she needed some fresh air. Dwight had been absent around the same time. I thought nothing of it at the time. Now it all clicked into place. The affair started that night. Dwight had cornered Josephine at my engagement party, telling her that marrying me was a mistake. He played on her insecurities, telling her he could give her everything I couldn't. He said I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't the man she deserved. You believed him? I asked, my voice a cold whisper. After everything, you believed him over me? She shook her head. At first, I didn't, but he kept telling me all these little things. How you'd never be able to provide the life I deserved. How my family treated you. How they'd treat our kids someday. He made me feel special, desired. He said Sarah didn't understand him. He made me believe that we were meant to be. I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. The depth of the betrayal. How could she not see the manipulation? How could she have fallen for it? You met him where? I demanded, needing to know the full scope of the deception. His office, she whispered, barely able to speak through her tears. Sometimes hotel rooms, when we could get away for lunch. Once at their house when Sarah was visiting your parents. Every word hit me like a punch to the gut. How could you? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. How could you lie to me for months? How could you plan a wedding with me, wearing my ring, and then do this? She begged for forgiveness, insisting it was a mistake, that she loved me. Please, she said, packing a bag hastily. We can work through this. People make mistakes. I love you, not him. But I couldn't even look at her anymore. The pain was suffocating, and the anger burned through me like wildfire. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this, I spat. You wouldn't have spread your legs for my sister's husband. I could see the confusion and guilt in her eyes, but it didn't matter. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick to my stomach. Get out, I said, my voice as cold as ice. You have 30 minutes. Take what you need. Anything left behind goes in the trash. And with that, I kicked her out. Once Josephine left, I didn't know what to do. My body felt like it was made of lead, and my mind was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. I didn't even know where to start, so I just sat there, the emptiness around me matching the hollow feeling inside. She begged me to let her explain, to forgive her, but I couldn't. I couldn't even look at her. The woman I had planned my future with, the woman I trusted more than anyone, had completely shattered me. The thought of ever trusting her again seemed impossible. That night, I called Dwight. I don't even remember exactly what I said. Everything was a blur of rage and pain. He tried to act calm at first, claiming it was just a drunken mistake that meant nothing. But I could hear the defensiveness in his voice as I pushed him for answers. Then, when I pressed him further, he said something that made my blood run cold. Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me, he said. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you kidding me? I yelled into the phone. You're blaming me for you sleeping with my fiancé. You've got some nerve. He apologized, but it was all fake remorse. Josephine and I connected on a level you two never did, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. She deserves better. And so does the baby. The baby. That word felt like a slap in the face. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I wasn't going to sit around while he got to walk off into the sunset with my life, with my fiancé, with everything I thought was mine. But I needed to think. I needed to do something to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he had caused me. I didn't want to sink to his level, but my blood boiled at the thought of him getting away with it. So I decided to confront him. I drove to their house. The drive was a blur of anger, each mile a reminder of the pain I was about to unleash. I wasn't sure what I planned to do when I arrived, but the thought of Dwight getting away with betraying me and destroying my relationship drove me forward. When I arrived, I wasn't prepared for what I found. My parents were already there, sitting in the living room, all looking like they were in on some twisted family meeting. Dwight was sitting there too, trying to look like he was the victim. My mother was rubbing his shoulder, comforting him. My dad stood with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, not in Dwight. "Look who finally showed up," my dad said, his voice laced with judgment. "Care to explain why you're threatening your brother-in-law?" he asked, almost sneering. I was beyond shocked. Brother-in-law? This man, this stranger, had been sleeping with my fiancé, and my father was treating him like a victim. I couldn't even fathom it. "You mean the man who's been sleeping with my fiancé for months?" I said, my voice raw with emotion. "The man who got her pregnant while married to your daughter?" My mum gasped. "Josephine's pregnant? Oh, Dwight, you poor thing. What a mess that girl has made of everything." It was surreal. I couldn't believe I was hearing this. "Are you serious right now?" I shouted, the anger rising in my chest. "You're worried about Dwight. He's the one who cheated. He's the one who ruined everything." But they weren't hearing me. My mum, as usual, started lecturing me. "You need to forgive him," she said, her voice dripping with concern. "He's been under a lot of pressure. Jess hasn't been very attentive lately, and men have needs. Are you actually justifying him cheating on your daughter?" I asked, unable to hide the disbelief in my voice. My father cleared his throat and spoke in that condescending tone he always used. "Jess is upstairs resting. She's understandably upset, but she's willing to work through this. That's what mature adults do. Mature adults." I wanted to scream. They were treating this like it was some petty misunderstanding instead of a full-blown betrayal. "What about me?" I asked. "What about what he did to me?" But no one cared, not even my sister, Sarah, who had always been the favourite. She wasn't there, and when I asked where she was, my father said she was resting. Resting. She was probably hiding from the truth, just like the rest of them. Then came Dwight's smug voice. "I've apologized to Jess, and she's forgiven me. Josephine and I made a mistake, but now we need to think about the baby. This isn't just about us anymore. The baby." I couldn't stand hearing that word. It was like a slap to my face every time it came up. That was the final straw. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Years of bottled resentment and pain exploded out of me. "You know what?" I said, my voice shaking with fury. "I'm done with all of you." I turned to Dwight, who had the nerve to sit there, acting like he was the injured party. "You're pathetic," I said, my voice low and venomous. "You're a coward who's never worked for anything in his life. You think you've won something here? Congratulations. You got a woman who cheats on her fiancé. I'm sure she'll be faithful to you. Good luck with that." With that, I stormed out of their house. I didn't even look back as I drove away. I knew there was no going back. The family I had tried to please my entire life had turned their backs on me. I cut them all off, every last one of them. I stopped answering calls from my parents, from Sarah, from any of them. It was liberating, in a way, but it didn't make the pain go away. I spent the next week in a haze. The betrayal consumed me. I barely ate, barely slept. I couldn't focus at work. The weight of it all was crushing me. And then my boss called. She could tell something was wrong. "We're concerned about you," she said. "This isn't like you. Is there anything we can do?" I broke down. I told her everything. I didn't hold back. After listening, she didn't judge me. She simply offered a solution, a temporary transfer to Seattle. "It might help to have some distance," she suggested. "Take a few months. Clear your head. The position is yours when you're ready to come back." I accepted without hesitation. I didn't care about anything else. I needed to escape. 3 months later, I moved to Seattle. I found a new apartment, changed my phone number, and started therapy. I was trying to rebuild my life, trying to move past the mess my family had made of me. But even in Seattle, they kept finding ways to invade my life. They showed up at my new workplace, tried to ambush me in parking lots. My mum left messages begging me to come back. "Josephine needs closure," she said. "Dwight needs your support." The worst part was when Sarah, my own sister, reached out. "You should forgive Dwight. The baby is innocent in all this," she said, completely ignoring how much pain she had caused. No empathy, no understanding, just the same script. "We need to come together as a family." I had to cut ties completely. This wasn't a family anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. But then, just as I thought I might finally have a moment of peace, Josephine reached out. She told me she was keeping the baby, that she and Dwight were going to co-parent, and somehow my parents were thrilled about becoming grandparents. They'd completely forgotten about the awful things they had said when Josephine was with me. And then, the ultimate slap in the face, Josephine suggested we could be friends again, for the baby's sake. She even had the audacity to suggest naming the baby after my father. "We're thinking of naming him David," she said. "We'd love for you to be in his life as his uncle." I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even process it. The child she conceived through her betrayal, named after my father, was supposed to be part of my life now? No, absolutely not. I've spent so much time trying to figure out where to go from here. But the truth is, I don't know. The pain is still fresh, and I'm still trying to find my footing. But one thing is clear, I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, and the family that never cared about me. I'm done. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first step toward healing.